the world is vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Every day, we hear about new victims of violence.
Terrorism does not arise in a vacuum. Terrorism can arise in a society that is filled with frustration and stress. We are living in a time of tremendous pressure, rapid change, competition, and crowding.
Such numerous military conflicts, terrorist attacks, and the threat of use of not just lethal but mass destruction weapons testify that we, humanity, to some degree lose control over these things. Every individual has consciousness. In conflicts, people's consciousness is confronted first, then come technologies. Therefore, both at the systemic global level and at the level of an individual, it would be wise to address security problems, aiming at consciousness first.
If you can diffuse that stress so that the society is less filled with hate and the desire for vengeance, then the society no longer breeds terrorists. And somebody who may be angry one day, if they wake up fresh and clear, not feeling so stressed, that thought of committing violence and taking one's own life to claim the life of others, that thinking just disappears. So terrorism and violence, it's all a state of mind. And it can be changed as easily as we change our mind.
More than 600 scientists, Nobel laureates, foremost educators and political leaders from 21 countries gathered in Kiev to find appropriate and effective responses to ongoing crises and conflicts around the globe. The Global Peace Summit, entitled Science and Peace: Proven Solutions to Violence and Global Conflicts, was hosted by the Global Union of Scientists for Peace.
We're living in an epidemic of conflict. So what we really need to do to ease the conflict and reduce the violence very quickly and really quite easily is reduce the amount of stress in the world, if it could be done. And as a scientist, I'm really delighted to report that based on the latest scientific research, based on the latest understanding of mind and body, there are techniques, very powerful stress-reducing techniques, especially according to research, according to the American Heart Association, according to doctors throughout the world. The Transcendental Meditation technique, which can be learned by anyone, even school children, is a powerful antidote, a powerful medicine against stress.
The Transcendental Meditation technique was created by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the late 1950s. Every human is a powerful quantum system, a psycho-bioenergy information complex. And it is from this perspective that we should work with a person. These technologies are very efficient. Within a very short time, a person reaches absolute tranquility.
Stress comes from environmental pressure. It also comes from within. So what's very beautiful is when a person meditates and just slips beyond these surface stresses and experiences deep inner peace, those stresses really just melt away. And over time, we strengthen ourselves to be immune to stress. It's like a vaccination. Transcendental meditation is like a vaccination against stress. So it's stress that drives poor health, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer. Most disease is caused or complicated by stress. But also mental disease and violent behavior, antisocial behavior. It's really as simple as that.
When people are highly stressed, they can't get along, they can't cooperate. We find that in our personal lives all the time. If you're feeling well rested, it's a different world. If we're not rested, then things come up, we're irritated with other people, we're cross. Ever on meditation in 1970 was the first study to ever show that meditation can change how you react physiologically to stress. And what I found is that the meditators had lower stress levels, which you could measure physiologically, and in reaction to stress, they recovered faster. So what happened, the energy would mobilize to deal with the situation, but then quickly recovered.
There are pharmaceuticals, drugs, and they basically don't work. There is no drug which is specifically indicated for and is effective for post-traumatic stress. So there are drugs that can help with certain symptoms that are associated with post-traumatic stress. If you are depressed, then there are antidepressant drugs. And if you're anxious, then there are drugs that will calm you down. But nothing that really is even purported to cure or necessarily address post-traumatic stress. So drugs are kind of off the table.
The transcendental meditation technique is the most highly effective method of reducing PTSD. Very quickly, the nightmares begin to go away. People feel more alive again. They don't feel so suicidal. Drinking problems fall away. Problems with the family decrease. They're more engaged in their jobs. They're able to keep their jobs and to become a part of society.
Scientific research proves that after practicing TM, people's work efficiency increases and their mental abilities improve. The effectiveness of TM is confirmed by 600 studies, 380 of which have been published in leading peer-reviewed journals. Robert Roth is one of the most influential teachers of meditation in the United States. Over 40 years, he taught transcendental meditation to thousands of people.
And people say to me, well, that's not practical. And I say, and what we're doing is practical? The approaches that are being used today are practical. The approaches we're doing today are just exacerbating the situation. People are dying. People are suffering. Children, I could bring tears to my eyes. Hundreds of thousands of millions of displaced people and the suffering that's going on. Why not give this a try? Why not give it a try? There's no harm. All people of all religions can practice it. And it's easy to learn. So the meditation is practiced for children for 10 minutes, for adults 20 minutes. Once in the morning, before the day begins, you get up 10 minutes earlier or 20 minutes earlier and meditate. Some people say, oh my gosh, 20 minutes earlier? I need as much sleep as I can get. But this is better than sleep. It's not like getting up and then you have to study, or you're getting up and you have to exercise. This is better than sleep. So it's done first thing in the morning, and then it's done again in the late afternoon, something before dinner. When we do it in schools, and we've 500,000 school kids now, Foundation has provided scholarships for 500,000. So they do it to start the school day, and they do it at the end of the school day before they go home.
Since 1970, the TM technique has been tested all around the world, and in the groups where people meditated simultaneously, the results exceeded all expectations.
In Washington, D.C. in 1993, 4,000 experts in this brain-based approach came together, and the scientists wanted to know, does this have any effect on criminals in Washington? And they found that in this time when they were practicing together, these 4,000 experts, that the crime rate dropped by 23%, which means that a quarter of potential criminals did not commit their crime. They just did not have the intention to commit a crime. And the same in the Middle East. In Israel, there was a similar test. When groups came together and practiced it in groups, this brain-based approach, in neighboring war-torn Lebanon, the hostile and enemy attacks on Lebanon decreased by 48%, and war-related fatalities and wounded decreased by 70%. Now we have seen that the root cause of crime and violence and war is collective stress. If stress is accumulating in the society and reaches a certain point, it must erupt, and erupts also on the individual level, the same way on the collective level in violence, and even maybe wars or terrorism.
Well, how can this happen? Why would criminals be less likely to commit a crime when some people are meditating in some building somewhere and the criminal doesn't know anything about them, and the people don't know anything about the criminal? And they're not thinking they want the criminal to be less, creating crime. They're just meditating, feeling very peaceful, very happy, fulfilled within. That process is enlivening the field effect of consciousness. And so these they took measures of hormones, and particularly of serotonin and something called 5-HIAA, and the measures and also cortisol. And what they found was, and this was with people in the community who were not themselves meditating, and even as far away as maybe 40, 50 kilometers distance. And what they found was cortisol went down, and cortisol is associated with stress and anger and like that. And serotonin, which is associated with happiness and decreasing stress. If there's more serotonin, you feel happier, less stress. So serotonin increased.
I think one of the most remarkable examples of this is in Colombia. I think you know that there's been a civil war going on many, 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 many years there. And all of a sudden it stopped. And President Santos, who is one of the endorsers of some of the technologies that are going on here, that are being presented here today, was a beneficiary of these technologies to creating an atmosphere of cooperation, an atmosphere of peace between the revolutionaries and the existing government, to bring an end to this long-time civil war that has been going on. And for this, he received the Nobel Peace Prize.
The last 5 years, over 1 million students have learnt Transcendental Meditation, and about half that number the advanced TM City program in Latin America in 22 countries. And you will have noticed about a month ago that for the first time in recorded history, there are now no wars in Latin America. It's gone. in the past by bringing groups of people practicing transcendental meditation to different problem areas in the world. So, for example, President Chissano of Mozambique, when he was elected, there was a 30-year civil war going on in Mozambique that was devastating the economy. And so he introduced this program into his military. And he credits the end of the civil war happened almost immediately.
I had read in the writings of Maharishi that we would need a big number of people doing a transcendental meditation in a country, which would be the square root of 1% of the population, yes. Well, we found that it would be difficult to find such a big number to meditate in one place. So what I did was to start by mobilizing some people, voluntary people in the armed forces and the police.
TM's positive effects have also been noted in other countries.
The president of Ecuador has introduced the program into his military, and he credits the peace that's broken out with that. And all over the years, I mean, the very first time this was done, actually, was back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Maharishi had begun to teach transcendental meditation, and during the missile crisis, he called a group together to Catalina Island in California, and they did group meditation together, and they say it was a miracle that President Khrushchev withdrew. Nobody expected it to happen.
Lately, the attention of scientists in this field has been increasingly drawn to Ukraine. For 3 years, Ukraine's eastern region has been ravaged by an armed conflict. According to the UN, the ongoing conflict has claimed over 10,000 lives. 24,000 people have been wounded, and nearly 2 million have been displaced. TM adherents believe Ukraine's armed conflict could be resolved peacefully by the end of this year.
The other reason is there's an interest among the scientists and among the high-level leaders of Ukraine to look into this possibility of creating peace in such a simple way. This conference comes out of a grant proposal that we did for the United Nations last year. And we proposed to teach 1,000 military cadets in Ukraine transcendental meditation. One reason was to make them more resilient. The research shows that it's a way for the person in the military or any person to go back within themselves to recharge their batteries.
The fact that Ukraine is hosting this event is a step forward. Scientists from around the globe urge the world to find peaceful solutions to these kind of issues. We've learned by now that we cannot win through military means. Nobody can.
If we can create peace, harmony, calm, and national unity in Ukraine, it will be like a key bridge for the whole world. This is why, instead of holding this conference at the United Nations in New York, where it was originally scheduled, we moved it to Kiev.
In Ukraine, transcendental meditation was actively used during the Maidan protests of 2014. We created a group that practiced transcendental meditation in the tents on the Maidan Square. During the most difficult period of clashes, late February, early March, we gathered about 100 people who constantly practiced advanced TM and TM-Siddhi programs to de-escalate the conflict. And this group was enough to ensure that the level of collective consciousness rose and normalization was reached. By May, the situation in Kyiv was quiet and calm. Later in Ukraine, researchers monitored the effect transcendental meditation had on the military in the conflict zone in the east.
Ця ТМ спрямована на оздоровлення особистості.
This TM is aimed to help people recover, help them understand their role in the society, and eliminate aggressiveness. The state of aggressiveness is a key factor.
Подіях. Ми перевірили десь.
We tested this technique on 180 combatants, demobilized soldiers, and IDPs. I can claim that this technique has a positive effect. It improves recovery and contributes to the restoration of an individual as an ecosystem. Servicemen recover after combat much faster. Their sleep improves. Sleep deprivation damages normal existence. But after 2 or 3 weeks, soldiers recover quicker. They can sleep right in the conflict zone. 20 minutes of meditation could do more than 2.5 hours of sleep. That's why, on the one hand, this improves soldiers' effectiveness, psychological endurance, and stamina, while on the other hand, their ability to make adequate decisions in difficult situations also improves. Scientists propose to create permanent groups of meditators in Ukrainian schools so that children can also practice the technique.
Children in school themselves become peace creators. They function like a washing machine that washes the stress out of the collective consciousness of the country. And so this is the future. And the future can come today, or it can come next week or in 10 years. But that's the future, and why not have it come today?
To produce an effect worldwide, we need about 8,000 true creators of peace who practice programs more powerful than meditation. These programs are called TM Siddhi. If you imagine usual meditation as a 10-watt light bulb, TM Siddhi is a 1,000-watt light bulb. So 8,000 creators of peace could make the world a better place. When we find ourselves in the dark, we can just turn on the light and the darkness disappears.
We are in the 21st century, and the only way we can solve our problems is with scientific knowledge. And therefore, if you have an organization like GUSP, then it can play an extremely important role in bringing science to the doorstep of every human being, bringing science and knowledge to the consciousness of everyone. We would then be able to understand the problems that we have caused and the scientific methods by which we can solve them. So I think GUSP has an extremely important role in solving some of the biggest challenges that we are facing, for instance, even in the field of climate change.
To ensure that our planet is peaceful, that people live in it in complete safety, and everybody is successful and always healthy, so that not only their present, but their future as well will be peaceful and happy.
Peace in Ukraine, peace in the world, and a higher quality of life for every person on earth. Then we'll feel that the work is done. But as a step towards those very lofty goals, this is a giant step forward. That's what I would say. We have made a very big step forward. And it's very fulfilling that when you make a step, then you feel the fulfillment of that step. You make another step, then you feel the fulfillment of that step. It's when you're not progressing that you begin to feel some lack of fulfillment. So we are all enjoying fulfillment on the road to a better life for all the people of Ukraine first, and through Ukraine, better life for all people on earth. This is the goal of the Global Union of Scientists for Peace.
This is the age of science, and people may have different opinions. Yes, it'll work. No, it can't work. It doesn't matter what my opinion is or yours. What matters is the scientific fact. And everything we've said at this conference these days has been based on extensive published scientific research, published in the top journals across the world by top medical organizations and by governments around the world. So it is solid. This is a truth, undeniable. If people can just then accept what is a factual truth, very quickly this process, this program will be implemented. So the short answer to your question is, what could stand in the way of the rapid implementation of this technique? Simply ignorance. But ignorance is easily cured by knowledge, just as darkness disappears just by bringing a single candlelight. It's that simple.